Hi, thank you for joining me today for Let's Be Creative with LBC. My name is Tracy Sawyer and I am part of the Education and Community Engagement team. So I don't know about you, but I have found that time is a little bit fleeting these days and I lose track of it. Did you realize that Mother's Day is this coming Sunday? I know, it was a surprise to me too. At the same time, I have been exploring projects using toilet paper rolls. They're kind of a thing these days. So guess what? Today we are going to put the two things together to make a couple of projects that you might be able to give to your mom or special someone on Sunday. So the supplies you'll need are scissors, stapler if you've got one, glue stick or crafter's glue, but glue stick is really good for this one. Of course, toilet paper. We've got to have newspaper. All the projects I've been doing lately seem to have newspaper. You will need also a piece of printer paper. I also used some highlighter markers and watercolors. If you don't have those things, not to worry, I'll show you some options. I make a lot of scrapbooks and mini books and cards, and so I happen to have a lot of supplies, but I'm trying to use things that you might have at home so that you can do this too without going to a lot of expense and trouble. So I'm going to show you a couple of projects and then I'll show you how I made them as we go. All right, so the first one is my sample piece. This was printed on newspaper. I ripped the edges. That's kind of a thing. I like to rip edges. And I made, if you can see these little flowers, I made the stamp using a toilet paper roll. So what you need to do is get a pair of scissors. And by the way, if you are a little, safety scissors actually do work on the toilet paper roll. Make sure you get some help or use it. Use the safety scissors. So you just are going to cut some strips. You can make them as wide or narrow as you want, depending on what you want to do. That's something you'll want to explore because these are fatter. Can you see that they're fatter ones? And they would give you a different kind of flower than these skinny ones I'm making. All right, so we've cut our toilet paper into strips. I'm going to flatten them out. I'm not going to crease the ends, but I'm going to flatten them out and nest them together. You see how they're nested together? And then I am going to put a staple in them at the midpoint. So stand by for a second while I do this. It was easier when I practiced. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and staple it right there in the middle. So now it's kind of like a bow, and then I'm gonna reconfigure the flower shape. Stand by one moment while I do that. All right, so there you go. This gives you an idea of the flower. So there you go. Do you see? It's just made into a nice little flower. So for this piece I made, this is the flower I made in the first place. And you can see that there's ink all around it. I used ink and I used a Sharpie to ink up this edge. I will tell you that the more you do it, the more ink will begin to saturate the toilet paper and it will actually get easier as you go. If you have an ink pad, that might be easier for you. If you don't have an ink pad, not to worry, you can use the humble Sharpie. But here's the thing, if you use the Sharpie, by the time you get all the way around this flower, using a Sharpie on the side, it will start to dry out and it won't give you a lot of an impression. So what you need to do, let's see if I can make this work. Going all the way around the petals with this Sharpie, a little here. It's pretty dry, so what I will do is huff on it and then it should give me an image. So I'm pressing down. Well, it didn't work as well as I would have liked. It's on there a bit, but you get the idea. So if you use a Sharpie, it is a little bit harder. The other thing I want to tell you is when I was making the cuts for this little sample, I wasn't very careful about the widths. I sort of like the irregularity about the pattern on here. It's not all even and perfect. If you are an even and perfect person, you know who you are, then you're going to want to make sure that you cut them all the same width, whether it's 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, and be mindful of that. Mark the toilet paper roll in advance, because that way you'll have a more even, when you go to press it to stamp, you will have an even edge. So there's something for you to think about. Let's see. The next thing I have for you is a card that I made. So I, again, used toilet paper rolls. There are 3 little hearts. I made a heart stamp from the background. So the first thing I did was I cut 2 1/4 by 2 inch rectangles out of, you got it, newspaper print. I mounted them onto some black construction paper. If you don't have black construction paper, there are some pieces in the paper that are darker. I just like the contrast between the 2 colors. I made a little heart, which is like this, and I used a Sharpie and a stamp to stamp it on to here. And then I wanted to tell you, this is half of the size of one of these, it is half of a slice of a toilet paper, and I wanted it to be smaller, so I cut the piece in half and then used glue stick to hold it together, and then I put something on it to bind it together. I actually happened to have a bobby pin handy, so I used a bobby pin like this, and that dried the glue stick, and then it held as a little heart. So you can make things different sizes. You can also make something bigger by gluing more pieces of toilet paper together, and then you can make that work. Okay, what else did I want to tell you? Yes, if you do dry things with glue stick, put a bobby pin or a binder clip on it. I left mine overnight, but on these warm days it will dry pretty quickly and you'll have your piece. So I made little hearts like this. I crimped the bottom so that they would have a little shape in the manner that I just told you, and put them on. Also, this is a piece of printer paper that I put the card on. When I normally make cards, I would put it on cardstock or something that has a little more heft, but we're trying to use materials that most people would have at home. So I just borrowed a piece of printer paper and I folded it in half and then half again. And this gives you the heft you need to hold the pretty parts of your image. All right, what else have I got for you? All right, so the last piece I have to show you today is this that I made for my mom. This is a piece of 8.5 by 8.5 construction paper. You can also use cardstock, or again, a piece of newspaper or a magazine or something. These are 4 by 4 inch squares of, you guessed it, newsprint. I used that same stamp that I made for the first project to stamp the images, the random images on the piece. And then I shaped the petals out of toilet paper rolls that I had cut. And by the way, don't forget, this is a wider cut, and that would give you a deeper and different look. It just kind of depends on how you want yours to look. I had watercolors handy, so I used watercolors to paint the petals. There's a little yellow in here. To make this center part, I twirled a bunch of toilet paper together. This one is held by newspaper because I used glue stick to hold it together, and then I held it together with rubber band and cut it and put it here. The stem was actually a little bit hard. I didn't quite get it the way I wanted it, but I ripped toilet paper roll long ways and then kind of twisted it to put it into position. It was a little harder to ink, so it's fine. It looks great. I made the leaves in the same way as I made the heart earlier. I cut strips of toilet paper and then crimped them at the bottom with some glue stick, and then I put a binder clip to hold them. So one thing, I don't know if you can tell, that I did on here is I wanted for my mom, so I wanted it to be a little special. It's a little challenging right now to get out and shop and buy cards and things like that. So, but I wrote my mom a little poem, a very simple poem that I put on here, and I would like to share it with you. So it's a very easy structure that you can do. A lot of times people think, oh no, poetry, I can't do it. Yes, you can. So the first line is the name of your person. It could be your mom, your grandmother, your aunt, someone who is special to you, your abuelita, your tia, someone that's important to you. You put that person's name on here. Then you write a name of a place. I put home. After that, on the next line, you write an adjective. Then you write another adjective. Then write one or two words of something that you like to do with the person you're writing this to, and then you repeat the first line at the last. So mine is mom, home, funny and generous, making cards, love, mom. Shh, don't tell her, because I really am going to send this to her. So I'd love to see what you do. I was pretty happy with how this turned out. Oh, I was going to tell you. So this is watercolors that I had. You can also use color crayons to color these in. If you have color crayons, remember the sample project I had used highlighter pens. Highlighters are kind of a common house item. And then I also have oil pastels. I could have used those. But going back to the card, remember this one didn't have any color, and I really like how that looked. The toilet paper kind of has a craft paper appearance, and on the black and white with the newsprint, it looks pretty cool. I preferred this one without color. So color isn't actually needed. You can do it if you want and not if you don't. So I would love to see the projects that you make. I always say that, and I always mean it. So you are welcome to post your images here to this page on Facebook, or you can email them to me at tsawyer@lutherburbankcenter.org. And if you want, I can give you that poetry structure. If you send it to me by email, I'll reply to you with what I did. It's pretty simple, fairly foolproof. I think you can do it, and I think you should. So I hope you enjoyed making these projects with me today. I really want to see what you did. And please join us tomorrow for another episode of Let's Be Creative with LBC.